Hello, my name is Roxy Ratzow, and I would like to talk about the differences between art and graphic design. When I first started studying graphic design in college, I was told that graphic design is not art and we are not artists. However, after this, we were required to take illustration, printmaking, and photography classes. Are these not art? When I first began considering the question of where is the gray area between art and graphic design and when does one become the other, I thought about what these two things are. The dictionary defines art as the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. Whereas graphic design is to improve the visual appearance and function of messages and information according to AIGA. If graphic design is a visual means of communication, can art be considered graphic design as well? What could fall under that definition, which may not traditionally be recognized as graphic design, and why? Thinking about this, I began to consider early renditions of biblical text. These often included images as a means of storytelling for a public who was largely illiterate. From this starting point, I began to consider that all religious art could, in this way, be considered graphic design, as they are a visual representation of scenes from the Bible. When does the craft of creating stop being art and become design? Are the Moulin Rouge posters created by Toulouse-Lautrec not art, or are they strictly graphic design? Does a poster print made of a painting stop being art and become graphic design? Can they be both, or is there a line drawn in the sand separating the two from each other? Perhaps the answer lies within this gray area. Maybe art and design are mutually exclusive, and also related. They exist simultaneously, and their lines of definition are parallel and intertwined. To further my research, I created a survey to send out to as many people as I possibly could: designers, artists, and people not in either field. My survey asked if participants would provide, in their own words, descriptions of their understanding of what both art and graphic design are. Then I provided sample images from a variety of artists and designers and simply asked if the survey participants would consider it art or design and why. There were no right or wrong answers. The intention was to explore how art and graphic design are interpreted. I documented both quantitative and qualitative data from the 28 participants' answers to my survey. In reading the results, it became clear to me that there is another factor I hadn't considered: context. How the images were perceived was not only by the images themselves, but could be interpreted differently depending on their context. Another point to note is the influence of material on the perception of the images. A lot of the responses suggested that if they thought something was created digitally, it must be graphic design and not art. I began seeking out artists who are working in multimedia to create their pieces. Jessie Draxler's work I first saw on Instagram, and it immediately struck me as something that could fall within this gray area I was so curious about. Upon further exploration, I found that this was exactly right. He works within multiple mediums to create his abstract pieces, combining photography, painting, illustration, and collage. As this is exactly the idea for the pieces I plan on creating, I think his is an excellent source for inspiration. Though Jamian Giuliano Villani works mostly as a painter, I am inspired by her technique. In her studio, she uses a projector in order to use references from pop culture to create many layers to her pieces. Hannah Hoch was a collage artist, part of the Dada group in Germany after World War I. Her work helped to pioneer the photomontage style. Though Hoch is noted in graphic design history, I feel there is an argument that her work could be art. The combination of paint and collaged photographs is a style that I hope to emulate in my pieces for this project. Jean-Michel Basquiat's work was founded in graffiti in the underground of Manhattan in the late 70s. Graffiti is another style that can fall within the gray area between art and graphic design, as it is prominently artistic lettering. Paula Scher is credited as one of the most influential graphic designers of all time. Her work as a typographer is world famous. However, I feel that she also could be described as an artist with some of her pieces. In the Netflix series Abstract, she is shown in her home creating massive maps by hand. Yes, this is type. However, she is using brush and paint. To me, this is exactly the area where art and graphic design come together. I began my visual exploration by first constructing several digital collages. each incorporating different themes I find interesting, such as color palettes, geometric shapes, and organic forms. Pushing further in my explorations, I found my way to this style. This direction encompasses many of my own personal interests and styles by the use of bones, insects, and foliage arranged in appealing designs. Out of this series, I created this design, which I decided to move forward with to create a non-digital version. On a 22 by 28 inch canvas, I worked with a projector and acrylic paint to lay down the design in layers. Starting with the diamond shapes in the background, I taped off the lines to paint them in. Next, I blocked in the flowers as solid shapes of color, but worked from a printout for the details. Similarly, I used the projector to paint in the shape of the cat skull, but then working from the reference, I drew the details in with a black paint pen. Here is a photo of the completed painting, and a side-by-side comparison of the digital collage and the final piece. From here, I considered how this design could be applied in other ways. I created a pattern by extracting the elements of the design and applied them to a wallpaper. I also imagined how it might look if the design was used for a tattoo. What I discovered during this process is that art and design are as much a part of each other as they are separate. A designer needs a certain amount of artistic qualities to create appealing pieces, and likewise, an artist needs some fundamentals of design in order to compose their work as well. I think the difference lies in how the person creating the piece feels about it and chooses to define their work. To push myself further, I opened an Etsy shop and have prints available for sale of my work. I have felt like an imposter for so long that I was always afraid to put my art out there in this capacity. But by doing this, I am declaring myself both an artist and a designer. Thank you.